officials, including the top brass of the security forces. I recognize the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Bernicia Nisbet, Ambassador, His Excellency Michael Powell, other senior government officials, and members of the media. Thank you for being with us today. Of course, these press conferences are designed to keep you up to date with what is happening in the government. It is part of the good governance agenda of the government of being accountable and transparent to the people in terms of bringing you information. Public information is a public good, and so therefore the government prides itself on bringing information to the people as part of its mandate. Of course, we all know that we are in the throes of the COVID-19 pandemic here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and we are managing this COVID-19 pandemic as best as we could with the National Emergency Operations Center, the Ministry of Health, and you, the public, who play an integral part in this management of the pandemic here in the Federation. The vaccination drive continues in the Federation today. It restarted today, the 8th of July, and will continue tomorrow, the 9th of July, on the days of limited operations. All health centers will be carrying out vaccinations from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. today. So you are encouraged to go out, those of you who would have had your first dose, for your second dose, and those of you who would not have had any dose at all, to go and get your first dose. Of course, this is a critical part in the management of the COVID-19 pandemic here in the Federation. So you are encouraged to go out in your numbers. Without further ado, I would like to invite the Honorable Prime Minister of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris, to address you.
Good morning. Allow me first to recognize the Cabinet colleagues at the head table and to thank them for coming. To also thank and recognize our Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Excellencies of the Diplomatic Corps, Financial Secretary, senior officials of the government who are here. I must thank our chairperson today, Mr. Lesroy Williams, for doing what he does best, assisting us in events like these. My fellow citizens and residents, I want to thank you for being a part of today's press conference, organized by the Office of the Prime Minister. This is one element of our good governance agenda in which we regularly inform, engage, educate, and update you on matters of public concern. In my address to the nation last Friday, I promised to report to you on the nature of a relief package which my cabinet would provide to our people, especially the poor and vulnerable affected by COVID-19. My government has earned wide respect as a fiscally prudent administration, but it is also a compassionate one. This explains our comprehensive stimulus package in response to the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. Our response at this time is taking place against the backdrop of the very destabilizing impact of COVID-19 and government tax revenues. Inflows have fallen significantly on account of several tax waivers, deferrals, and incentives given over the last year. To date, my government has paid salaries, wages, and pensions to nearly 10,000 persons who are part of the government establishment, the government auxiliary employees, STEP recruits, and pensioners. Between January to June 2021, my government has spent $164.3 million on employee-related benefits. I repeat, $164.3 million on employee benefits. You multiply that by 2, you get a picture of what it costs to support these 10,000 persons for the full year, over $300+ million. Truth be told, this government has been a model employer and it has refrained from either severing employees or reducing their benefits. In response to the pandemic, we have reduced corporation taxes from 33% to 25%, thereby mitigating the harsh impact on cash flows of businesses. We went further. We reduced by 50%, from 4% to 2% tax due by unincorporated businesses, which are mainly small and medium-sized enterprises. These initiatives were intended also to encourage businesses to retain many of their employees, or as many as they could. Indeed, in the initial stimulus package, we did tie these discounted tax to businesses retaining at least 75% of their employees. In sum, this government was and remains a people-centered government. You may ask, how are we able to do so much to date in response to this devastating pandemic and economies all around the world, large and small? And the answer is found in the words of the IMF in its recently concluded statement in July 2021. The IMF says, and I quote, St. Kitts and Nevis entered the COVID-19 pandemic from a position of fiscal strength, end of quote. The IMF went further to state that prompt government action helped to contain the pandemic's public health impact. The response measures effectively mitigated the pandemic's human costs, with St. Kitts and Nevis having had the lowest per capita case count in the Western Hemisphere and no mortalities in 2020, end of quote. The COVID-19 pandemic has created an extraordinary challenge to both the private and public sectors in St. Kitts and Nevis. It has been an existential threat to life and livelihoods around the world. It has caused the death of close to 4 million persons around the world, the equivalent of 255 million job losses globally have been attributed to COVID-19. From the inception of the pandemic in 2020, the government of St. Kitts and Nevis instituted a number of initiatives to ease the financial burden that this pandemic was expected to have on businesses and individuals, and at the same time stimulate economic activity in the Federation. These initiatives complemented our existing public assistance programs, such as the Poverty Alleviation Program, popularly referred to as the PAP, the payment of examination fees for students, school meals for our students, the provision of books for our students, food vouchers to the needy, medical assistance to those in need, early childhood subsidies, residential services for the elderly, and rent support for the poor and vulnerable. Our Poverty Alleviation Program has cost the government $70 million from its inception in December 2018 to May 2021. For the year so far, we have spent over $16 million to render PAP support to thousands of families in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. Last year, we spent over $37 million in social safety net programs. The wide range of them, I have enumerated some of them before. Indeed, St. Kitts and Nevis, from all records, has one of the most comprehensive social safety nets in the region. These initiatives instituted by your government also demonstrate a strong commitment to rebuilding the economy. This is also evidenced by the robust support to various sectors. Take, for example, construction and real estate sectors, two key pillars of the economy, have benefited from the government support, and I'll just name a few of the initiatives. We reduced the rate of stamp duty from 10% to 2.5% on the sale or transfer of real property, and this initiative will go until December 2021. This was announced in our budget. In terms of the first-time homeowners initiative, or under this initiative, first-time homeowners can receive duty-free concessions on building materials required for the construction of their first home. For the year so far, that is January to July, 78 persons have received concessions on building materials totaling $12.3 million. Between 2015 and present, that is during the tenure of our administration, some 795 applications were approved under the program. I repeat, since 2015 to present, 795 applications were approved. Put another way, separate and distinct from the government housing programs led primarily by the NHC and the homes renovated, repaired in response to the two last significant hurricanes which we had, the government has assisted 795 other individuals in constructing their homes by waiving of the duties. This is an excellent track record and home ownership by my government, and I feel certainly proud of this. We give God thanks for the blessings that have allowed us to contribute to property ownership in this, the land of our birth, in that way. Additionally, we have provided tax exemptions on building materials and equipment used during the construction of large developments, hotels, and other developments. The government employees mortgage facility was administered by the Development Bank of St. Kitts and Nevis. And then last year through the budget, we indicated that we will broaden those who could apply for home mortgage assistance. And so we developed what you may call the Citizens Mortgage Facility at the bank, where you get perhaps the lowest or one of the lowest interest rate on mortgage financing. The monies for this year were advanced, I am advised, in March of 2021. And between this short window, March to June, 40 mortgages were approved at the bank, totaling $6.4 million. The foregoing initiatives related to the construction and real estate sectors are expected to produce benefits to homeowners, obviously, developers, and a wide range of individuals engaged directly and indirectly with the construction sector. We are talking here about jobs and incomes to our citizens and residents. My government continues to provide ongoing support to the agricultural sector and the small business sector. And I want to identify some of that support because in the context of COVID-19, issues of food security loom large. How we are going to eat, how are we going to live? What if the boat doesn't come from Dominica? What happens? What if there's a disruption in the supply chain with respect to chicken, pork, beef, or any of the items for food which we import in such large quantities? The government, therefore, injected $15 million to boost production and to ensure agricultural food security. Over this period, the Ministry of Agriculture has allocated additional lands for farming. We have provided a temporary waiver of water payments for farmers. The water is critical to agriculture. We have the investment in agriculture, I'm pleased to report, has returned dividends. During the period January to May 2021, the dollar value of crop and livestock production rose by 44%, from $3.6 million in 2020 to $5.2 million in 2021. Significant movement. Crop output increased by 27%. Livestock output increased by 90% over the period. The Department of Agriculture has attributed this success to the stimulus package. Overall, fish landings increased by 51% for the period, January to May 2021, compared to the same period in 2020. We are therefore moving in the right direction to food security. We are not yet there, but we are moving in the right direction when we see this significant movement in the values. We will know when we are there, when fewer boats are coming. We will know when we are there, when the chicken we are eating in our hotels, in our restaurant, is produced here and is of the highest quality. Yes, we will know. For now, we could take comfort in the fact that based on those statistics, we are moving in the right direction. I want at this point to commend Permanent Secretary Ron Collins, for he has been working a plan, and the plan has brought results. I commend him, and through him, all those who are involved in the agricultural sector, including our partners like CARDI, AICA, and FAO, for their contribution. But most importantly, the work of our farmers come to mind. Names like Mr. Politics involving livestock, Debbie Gilbert Davis at Phillips, one of the most vibrant female farmers, Mrs. Pemberton in Old Road, George Jeffrey in Tabernacle, Shahid Williams in St. Paul's, the Henderson brothers in Sadlers, and Marsh, of course, my good Rastaman friend in Molyneux, among hundreds of others who are making a contribution. I want equally to mention a good brother, Mawson, Eastern Mawson, in the Buckleys area. I want to turn now to our support to the small business sector, and note in particular that in our last budget, we in fact proposed $3 million for the continuation of the Fresh Start program. As of June, I am advised that 45 loan applications were approved under that program, totaling $3.1 million. We have extended bond facilities at our customs for small businesses unable to cover customs duties on the importation of vehicles and commercial goods. The short point is that in almost every sector, the government has responded in a targeted way, bringing relief to those most in need of it. We looked after those who one may consider the large businesses who would pay their corporations taxes, dropped that dramatically by some 25% or thereabout. We looked after the small business entities, reduced their taxes by 50%. We have looked after the farmers, and we have looked after the fishers. And so we could feel a sense of satisfaction that the government continues to look after the interests of all the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. The extended stimulus initiatives, most of which I've made reference to, expired on the 30th of June 2021, such as the tax concession, the reductions. Given that the pandemic persists and it continues to adversely impact the current economic and social environment, Cabinet yesterday gave approval for the initiatives outlined above to be extended until 31st of December 2021. So in other words, we are providing additional relief, extended relief to unincorporated business, to corporations, etc., during this period. In addition to these continuing measures, my government proposes further initiatives to help the less fortunate to better cope with the financial hardship caused by COVID-19. And indeed, we propose these with a view of further stimulating the economy, that is, getting the economy back to work again, so that we can deliver on the stronger and safer future. I want now to outline these new initiatives, and I make note that we perhaps are the only government in the hemisphere to have come in 2021 to propose new initiatives. We are grateful for that, but it's a situation we do not take for granted. We have to ensure that we continue to be prudent in the management of the fiscal affairs, not just for today, but to look forward to the future with all the vicissitudes of life for which the government would have to intervene. The new initiatives. We will implement another income support program in the sum of $15 million to alleviate hardships on our citizens who remain unemployed since March 2020. These citizens, of course, must be registered with the Social Security Board. The Social Security Board then will be able to verify whether or not you have returned to work. A monthly stipend of $1,000 will be paid for the next 3 months. However, persons who have already received more than $15,000 in severance payment after March 2020 would not now be eligible to access the program. Persons receiving assistance under the PAP would only be entitled to receive an additional $500 under the Income Support Program. Again, the Income Support Program is targeting some of those persons out there who have not worked since March 2020. Some of these people may be persons on the PAP. Recall the PAP was set with a criteria, or one of the criterion was that the household income must be not more than $3,000. So if for some reason You are working, your income was less than $3,000, you're getting the PAP of $500. Since March, you got laid off, and you haven't found good luck yet. Instead of getting another $1,000, what you will benefit from is an additional $500, so that the total support you get from the government equates to $1,000. 500 on the PAP, 500 match up from the new income support program. Persons already in receipt of a government stipend of $1,000 would not now enjoy a further $1,000. And the reason for this must become obvious. We want to serve the largest number of persons who are adversely affected by the pandemic. And we do not want to give one person, as we would say in the good old days, if you go up with an old grandmother, we now put in relation to this. So you're getting something, you can't get another set, and somebody else out there in the community who is in need, that person is not allowed to receive a benefit. Our priority is to support those most in need at this time and to support as many persons as possible. In other words, we want to be fair and we want to be equitable in the reach and support, in the reach of the support which the government is and will be providing. The second initiative, we will waive commercial rent for 6 months, July to December 2021, for small businesses which lease space from the government through the Ministry of Tourism and Transport. These would include small businesses that rent booths at the ferry and bus terminals, the Amina Craft Market, and the Pelican Mall. And I suspect, Minister Grant, we could add those down at Black Rocks, assuming that they have been paying to this list. Once you are renting commercial space from the government for the next 6 months will basically waive the rent. So that's one additional burden you don't have to, at this time, be concerned about. We encourage private sector landlords of commercial space to give some measure of relief to their tenants. There are persons on 4th Street, down at Port Zante, all over the country, renting from others at Frigate Bay and elsewhere. And they are saying, well, business is a bit slow. Could our landlords help us? We are encouraging such landlords to give a measure of relief. We can't dictate how much, but we say at this time of national difficulty and global difficulty, you have a good tenant who is now experiencing challenges. Let your conscience be your guide and, of course, provide some relief. For our own part, this is what we will do. We will further reduce the VAT rate for 3 months, July to September, from 10% to 5% on commercial rent for small businesses with 25 or less employees. To benefit, you must have, of course, a valid business license. In other words, we will give you some relief. The VAT you would normally have paid in relation to commercial rental space, I am advised, was operating at about 10%. The government wants to bring some relief to you. We have cut the VAT by 50% to assist you. And if your landlord is a very nice landlord, he will come substantially in good measure to bring further relief to you. And we hope that the landlords are listening and will take note of what the government is doing. We will also ask those of you who are tenant, check the rate of VAT that is being added to your bill. It is not 17%, should have been 10%, and now it should be 5%. That is what the government can do. The government has inserted itself, if you will, in the private contractual arrangement to bring some relief in an area where it could. And so we are trying to help, and we ask the landlords to also do their part. The fourth initiative, we will reinstate the annual import duty exemption for 16 tires. This one is for the H-bus drivers. We will reinstate the annual import duty exemption for 16 tires. That is 4 tires per quarter, 4 pairs of brake pads, and 3 pairs of brake shoes for the H passenger buses. I want, and the government wants, to thank the bus operators who understand the reality of COVID-19 and appreciated that life must come first. Some of them very readily understood that if we are to control the spread, if we are to control the virus, they couldn't be carrying the same number of passengers as they did before the community spread. So I want to say thank you for appreciating that. We understand and we appreciate that for you, it has been a sacrifice. For the entire country, it has been a sacrifice. For the entire world, it has been a very difficult time. But we are in it together. So in good times and bad, we have to be there for one another. I want the bus operators to know that my government cares for you and your family. So in addition to reinstating the annual import duty exemption on 16 tires, seems like a lot to me, 4 tires per quarter, 4 pairs of brake pads, 3 pairs of brake shoes. The government will go further, and we will provide a fuel subsidy of $400 per month to passenger bus operators for 3 months. $400 per month to passenger bus operators for the next 3 months. This is real good compassion, and I want to commend the Cabinet for agreeing to provide this support to the bus operators. Again, a tangible demonstration that the government understands the hardship that we have been put through. And while this may not cover it 100%, it is a tangible demonstration that we are with you in good times and in bad. And you would hardly find any government as generous as we have been in this regard. Initiative 6, we will waive the stall fees for vendors used in the public market for the next 6 months. All our new vendors, those who are on 4th Street who will not go back there, those who were down in the terminal and elsewhere who will not go back there. For the next 6 months, the government is saying you do not have to pay the market keeper any more stall fees. You are able, you sign up, you observe the protocol, you be on your best behavior, you attend to your customers, and you attempt to get as much business as you can. Indeed, for my visits there is the best thing, one of the best things we have done for vendors, because everyone now have access to the hundreds of persons who go inside the market. Inside the market, every customer must come, observe the protocol, and they are able to patronize whomsoever they wish. So, Ms. Crossley for many years would complain, Mr. Prime Minister, it is unfair that we inside here and they outside there, and the customers wouldn't come inside. Now fairness has returned. Everyone has to go inside. And not just go inside in an orderly, regulated way. Go inside observing the protocols, because we have to learn to live with COVID-19. So you have to do the hand sanitizing, the wearing of masks. And if you're not prepared to do any of these things, then the security forces will not let you in. Each one then has to protect each other. And when I visit there one Saturday, several customers come up. They said, this is how the market's supposed to be. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you, thank you. There was a gentleman, a young man from St. Vincent. He said, I've been here for about 15 years doing this and never come into the market until now. He didn't know what's so lovely in there, look. So we are encouraging you to utilize the facility. And we have said to the Ministry of Agriculture, whatever else we need to do to make it as convenient for those who come, we will do. We will do some repairs to the roofing. We will paint up and refurbish a number of the stalls so that we have really a good place and the best place in which the vendoring can continue to take place. Another initiative, number 7, we will reduce for the next 6 months in an effort to boost visitor arrival. That is, we will reduce travel tax for the next 6 months in order to boost visitor arrival here. And in particular, it is part of the conversation we have been having at the heads of government level to do a regional initiative where every member state would reduce the travel tax as one incentive to boost inter-regional travel, because inter-regional travel has been impacted adversely by the COVID-19 pandemic. And we want to make it easier for our people to visit one another again. Of course, this will have benefits for the taxi operators and others engaged in hospitality service, who will be the primary beneficiaries of increased arrivals into the Federation. At times of challenge and difficulties, women are exposed. And so the government has taken note of the potential that more women are subject to abuse in these difficult times. We will therefore increase support to battered women through the Ministry of Social Development. In other words, women who are abused in difficult circumstances, they may be out of job, they may be being taken advantage of. The government wants to put an end to that. And so the government will provide additional resources to the Ministry of Social Development for them to intervene and to help stamp out the abuses and provide support to victims of abuse, thereby giving them a better sense of empowerment and independence. This is critical. The women, we have to protect them and we have to defend them. And the literature will say that during the course of the pandemic, you can have more physical altercations, violence about women and children even. And so the government in this new stimulus arrangement, we have looked out specifically to the vulnerable women in our society. Women and children. So the 9th initiative says that our differently able children always need a strong, supportive friend. And the government will assist households with such children with a stipend to help them over the next 6 months. Again, differently able children, some may be students at the special education unit, some may be students at Addis, some may be students at the new facility. When you were involved with that, they were to set up at Fort Lands. But the Autism Center, etc., the government will render support for those persons. And finally, the government, through the Ministry of Public Infrastructure and Utilities, has approached SCELEC, and SCELEC will provide a deferral on electricity bills for the next 3 months. For the next 3 months then, particularly for residential persons, you don't have to worry about electricity bills. For 3 months. At the end of it, you will make 6 months? 3 months. 3 months. At the end of that, of course, you could make your payment plan to deal with what you have been, would have accumulated. So we are trying to bring some sense of ease to the people at this time. There's one other category of persons that we are concerned about, and that is persons with their mortgages at the bank, some of whom may have suffered job losses. And what we have done is that I have approached the governor of the central bank, and we have asked that he put on the agenda of the Monetary Council consideration for the extension of the moratorium and mortgage payments to commercial banks. That, of course, should end, I think it is, in September 2021. So we're asking that the central bank make consideration to put before the Monetary Council for that facility to be extended. What that does was that it provided some leeway for those who owed the bank to be able to make relatively reasonable arrangement, including the restructuring of their loans, which reflect, as it were, their financial situation at the particular moment in time. The bank then gives a special dispensation to the commercial bank so that that readjustment is not portrayed in a negative way in their books. So again, we are looking forward with optimism to that coming before the Monetary Council, and we reasonably expect that that request, once put, will find favor. In concluding, this Team Unity government promises a stronger and safer future. And with God's help, we are determined to continue our progress in delivering on this promise, even in the face of a global crisis that has crippled health systems and economies around the world. With God's help, we will overcome the impacts of this pandemic. I have outlined initiatives that we have designed to stimulate economic activity and provide economic relief to our citizens and residents. It is my view, and it is the collective view of the Cabinet, that these initiatives, they are comprehensive, they are targeted. We have sought to find support and relief to some of the most vulnerable and the poorest of the poor in our midst. And they are far-reaching in terms of the transformation that they can bring. They certainly would add stimulation to the economy and put us on a better path for ongoing progress and growth. The pandemic, of course, is not yet over, and we do not know how soon it will end, because we're hearing all over the world about new variants. The Delta variant, now we are hearing of the Delta Plus in Spain and in other parts of the world, adding a new dilemma to the management of this difficult virus. Vaccination, of course, still remains the most critical tool in this fight against COVID-19 and its extensive, devastating ripple effects. Across the world, the best scientific evidence indicates that vaccination offers a critical layer of protection to individuals, and it provides the best possible outcomes to communities and countries. I therefore continue to urge and encourage citizens and residents to seize the opportunity to become vaccinated against this dangerous and deadly virus. May I remind you that the vaccination program starts today and it continues tomorrow, Friday, and will continue for the foreseeable future. Of course, we are reminded of the truism, a nation's health is a nation's wealth. To get wealth, to get the best results, we have to have healthy people in the workplaces, making their contribution to the development of the country, adding value day by day. I believe we all want the country to get fully back to work soon and in a safe way. And the best contribution any of us can make to getting the country back to a better state of vibrancy, and of course to ensure the safe opening of our economy very shortly, is to get vaccinated without further delay. More than ever before, the decisions of every person have the propensity to affect a larger number of people. Therefore, personal responsibility is a significant factor in the fight against the pandemic. Let us not think only of ourselves, but let us think of others. Let us think of how our actions may affect others in our homes, in our workplaces, everywhere, especially how they will affect the most vulnerable in our society. The elderly people around us, for example, the students in our schools who at this particular moment in time, unlike in my day, the vaccine is not available to them, or at least not globally available. Some countries have started to vaccinate younger people. In our day, we got the vaccine that helped us to deal with the mumps and all the other things that were there. And so that was the norm that you look forward to, and that gave you a sense of protection. Those under 18 now who cannot get the vaccine, they are now part of the broader, vulnerable group that we must protect. We in St. Kitts saw how that could destabilize learning and education for our children. We saw how we had to close our schools in response to the scare over COVID-19. The best way we can protect those children and their learning is for every adult, every father, every mother to be determined, I will be vaccinated, not just for myself, but because I love my children. So I want to encourage all not only to get vaccinated, but to observe the protocols. Wear your face mask properly, meaning over your mouth and your nose, especially when you are outside your homes. Sanitize or wash your hands frequently, and of course, abide by the physical and social distancing. I want to remind you, if the place is crowded, do not go there. The lines look too long and disorderly, do not go there to add to it, and then you yourself complain it. So you have to be wise, and you have to change your behavior. It only takes one person to create further havoc in our society by that person either not being vaccinated or not abiding by the protocols. Let me then end on a note of thank you to all our citizens and residents who have stepped forward so far. Some 69.4% of every adult understand the urgency of now, and they have gone forward to be vaccinated. Thank you very much for doing so. I invite those who have not yet gone to please go as soon as you can to get yourself vaccinated. For us to move to the brighter day, for us to turn the corner, for us to achieve the stronger and safer future, we must unite. At this moment of greatest challenge, unite as one people so that we can defeat this deadly virus. Thank you again, and at this point I would want to pause to entertain any questions from the media. Let me recognize the Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister of Education, the Attorney General, our Minister of Tourism, our Minister of Health, our Deputy Speaker, Ambassador Powell, and again, all the other senior government officials who have come to lend support in the event there are any questions in relation to their specific department. And I also have to recognize Senator Wendy Phipps and to thank all of them who have made time to come. We also have our Minister of Housing. In fact, I think this week, if everything goes well, after the lockdown, Jean, it shouldn't be this week, but after the lockdown, we are to go and do a tour of the housing projects that are there, for which we want to get our people to have them. So again, I want to say thanks.
Okay, we have arrived at the section for the questions and answers. The press corps who is here, I would invite them to the standing mic to ask their question. First, you would state your name and you would state the media house that you are representing. In the first round, we will allow 2 questions at a time, and then after that, in the second round, you can have a follow-up question. There are also some media houses who could not be here today and who would have sent their questions virtually. Those questions will be asked also after.
Good morning to everyone. Glenn Bart from SKN Newsline. Mr. Prime Minister, I'm also glad that you have the Minister of Tourism here with you, because one of my questions actually pertains to the restart of cruise tourism. But my first question really is to you. One of the recommendations or suggestions that came out in the statement by the IMF Article 4 mission was that the government should now concentrate in rebuilding the kind of surpluses it had that enabled us to deal fairly effectively with the pandemic, at least up to this point. Given what you know now on the market conditions out there internationally with regards to CBI programs, how difficult do you think it's going to be for St. Kitts and Nevis to rebuild the kind of surpluses that we had over the past few years, to again perhaps deal with an expansion of this pandemic or even something else? Secondly, with regards to tourism, to Mr. Grant, we know that the government of Florida had challenged the CDC with regards to the issues of vaccination of passengers boarding cruise ships, cruise lines. And it seems that, at least for now, they have that won. So you find that several cruise lines are now challenged in trying to say to persons, well, you can't board my ship because you're not vaccinated. Apparently that could actually end up giving them a hefty fine. So how does that affect our stance with regards to vaccination? And I assume also that you would have been collaborating with some of your colleagues in the other OECS countries. Is there a likelihood of taking an OECS position on this particular matter, for example? How do you respond to that? Thank you.
pleasant good morning to everyone. Shanique Harvey from ZIZ News. Prime Minister Harris, read the IMF statement. Can you please share your thoughts on this statement and what does this mean for the relationship between the government and the IMF going forward? I see that the Commissioner of Police is here. I have a question to direct to you, sir. Is there any information regarding reports of a gunshot or gunshots heard at Needs Must about 2 nights ago? Thank you.
Good day, Lashan Dixon, St. Serious Observer. 2 questions. What are the current state of government finances, especially considering the large expenses over the last 15 months due to the pandemic, and also now initiatives that reduces taxes, and also plans to fully reopen the economy in October, still a go-ahead? And what if herd immunity is not achieved by then? Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I think that was the first round from the media houses represented here. I would now invite the Honorable Prime Minister to start with the answers to the questions that were directly posed to him.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. In relation to the question on the rebuilding of the surplus buffers, which was posed by Glenn Barth, clearly this is part of the medium-term plan of the government. That is why we are attempting to find new measures and new areas of engagement. For example, we have looked at the marijuana industry as one potential growth area. And we certainly are looking at developing in a wide array our education tourism product. You would note that we have successfully repatriated over 1,000 Ross University students. That is a substantial purchasing power that now reside in the country. We are working with Windsor to repatriate another large number of their students. So we see that this has been a somewhat resilient sector, and we have targeted that for further inroads and development. You would note that in relation to our own CBI program, we continue to innovate in response to market developments, and we attempt to stay ahead of the game. We are known internationally as the platinum brand, the best of the best. We are known, and we have been adjudged as the most innovative CBI program in the world. And every year, we continue to do some form of innovation. We have introduced at least 3 new products this year. The Alternative Investment Program. We introduced the proposal for persons to sell, for example, a single home. And there is one other element of that innovation. Attorney General, help me with the 3rd one.
Extension to December.
And yes, we have extended a limited time offer. So we continue to bring innovative strategies to the CBI program to improve on its reach and to ensure that it remains relevant in the marketplace. We continue then to be optimistic about its performance, and even the IMF have had to concede that the projections of this government in relation to the CBI have always been better than theirs. In other words, we know it better than most. And so every prediction that we have made in relation to it have been fulfilled over the last number of years. And we note in their report, for example, they have been a bit more optimistic about scenarios and about the best contribution that they think the CBI can make to the economy. So these are real good developments in the context of the further fine-tuning of our CBI program. We see it as a pathway to ongoing growth and development, and we will continue over time to see successes in this area, while we have the most robust due diligence program, because we have to work them to keep the confidence of the international community. That is a critical part of our strategy going forward. So again, a favorable report from the IMF. So there's nothing over which I would argue. I would say that this mission has been a very successful one. I will invite the Financial Secretary as the Chief Technical Officer, who have been dealing with them for many years, to basically give her views and reflection of the mission. But from my own vantage point, Ms. Harvey asks, what are my views? I think that it is a good report. I have always believe that the IMF had advisory value. That is, they have a critical resource base of experienced, knowledgeable people, and whom we can draw upon to complement our own homegrown national resources in the development of policies. I have never thought that any country, and certainly one that I lead, would become captive to dictates of the IMF. They have not sought to do so under our watch. They have provided advice. We have indicated to them always the areas in which we think that their expertise could help us in advancing the country. And we have had, in my view, for this round of the mission, an excellent relationship. And I should say that is, since I have been there, the relationship has always been good. Where we have had difficulty, on one occasion, we were very strong about it. And we did so not only on the advice of the Financial Secretary, but on the advice of other professionals with whom we have consulted in relation to that particular matter. We are part of a constituency involving Canada and Ireland and so on and so on. And we consulted with the persons there, and they had told us that we were on point in relation to that matter. So again, we were not and we are not indebted to the IMF at this point in time. That doesn't rule out that there may be initiatives they may bring to us, which when we consider them, we may want to engage with them. And that gives us a sense of a leeway. In other words, discussing and negotiating with the IMF in 2021, notwithstanding the pandemic, is different to negotiating with the IMF in 2010, when the government was dead broke. It is difficult. So when an IMF say a homegrown program that you have to increase water bill by $600, and the government needs $234 million to survive for that year, the government can't say no to an IMF. When the IMF says, if you want my loan in 2010, 2011, you have to increase electricity bills by 85%. It's 234 you need, so how you going to tell them no? It's a different set of dynamics which are at play when you are relating to them as somebody who is their creditor. You owe them, you need a debt, to someone who they themselves have acknowledged have managed the country so well that at the start of the pandemic, we had the strongest financial position of any government anywhere in the hemisphere. That gives us leverage because we can say, well, we know what we're doing. We are a competent group and we have been managed in the country competently. So I think that is it. Financial Secretary, you could add your own independent voice to this. The state of government finances, you should check that day by day. So I leave that part to you two. But generally, we are not at a bad spot. And clearly, the fact that we have kept our employees, 10,000 of them, to date paid $164 million just for that aspect of it, without borrowing 1 cent, is an indication that we have, over the last several years, that we have been leading the government, managed the government prudently and wisely. And we are happy for where we are at. There is always room for improvement, but the challenges of the COVID pandemic has affected government everywhere in an adverse way. Financial Secretary.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister, and good morning to all. I would say that, Prime Minister, you have adequately answered the questions, but to add my voice in relation to the relationship between the government of St. Kitts and Nevis and the IMF is to say that we have always enjoyed a good relationship with the IMF, and currently we enjoy a strong relationship with the IMF. As it relates to government finances, we have indicated in our estimates and indeed the budget address that we anticipate for this year we would run a deficit budget. The government's policy has been directed by our own observations of what is taking place in the economy. And from all advice we have taken on board is that we should try as much as possible to avoid permanent scarring in the economy. And so therefore, whilst it may seem as though government is giving up quite a lot to the private sector in terms of taxes, it is a part of the strategy for them to be able to cope. Of course, we have recognized that this would mean less coming into the coffers of the government. However, we have also identified how we are going to fund that deficit. And we are funding that deficit and the programs that we have announced with the surpluses that we have announced in the past. And so they were not fictitious, they were real. And so the resources that we have are what we have been using to carry us through. Of course, if the pandemic persists, or God forbid that some other shock should come to St. Kitts and Nevis, we are in place with a contingency plan, which includes the possibilities of having ourselves using the leverage we have created in terms of reducing our debt to GDP ratio. We have quite a bit of headroom, and so we would be able to carry on. But not being pessimistic, we are always on the optimistic side, cautiously optimistic. We have been looking at the possibilities of the areas that we can help to grow the economy, and our recent interactions with the IMF demonstrates that we are on a steady and good path, which would lead to, once we are out of the current COVID strain, we are hoping that in 2022 and beyond, over the medium term, we will rebound to strong growth in the economy, as well as starting to rebuild the ability of the government to build its own fiscal resource to the point where we would expect to have surpluses in the future.
I would now like to invite the Honorable Lindsey Grant, the Minister of Tourism, to address the question with respect to cruise lines and vaccinations.
A pleasant good morning to all. I was asked to give an indication as to the restart of cruise. I must say that since the pandemic hit in March of 2020, We have been working assiduously behind the scenes, getting our stakeholders ready for the eventual day of the start of the cruise. And so we have trained in excess of 5,000 of our persons in the industry, ensuring that the new protocols that are now in place will be followed when we open up our cruise industry. I should also say that we were very much geared up to have our first ship sometime on the 14th of July. That's in a couple of days. But as you are aware, we are in the state of a lockdown. And so we thought it prudent to ask the cruise lines to hold off for the July 14th start date, bearing in mind that would have only come some 2 days after we would announce whatever new measures there would be on the 12th of July. As it stands at the moment, we are ready and able to accept the first cruise ship, which would be the Seabourn Odyssey, on Thursday, the 22nd of July. I should say that after this press conference, the cabinet will meet again just to fine-tune the restart of cruise. But we are anticipating that we would allow the Seabourn Odyssey in on July the 22nd. The Seabourn Odyssey will come every week thereafter. And then we have the Celebrity Millennium, which will come on July the 28th. When the Celebrity Millennium comes on July the 28th, it will come every other week thereafter. I should also say that August looks or is looking pretty good. In fact, we should have in August a number of ships, including the Allure, which is of the Royal Caribbean brand, which is a huge ship. So we are basically beginning the phase of allowing ships in. I must tell you, though, that as far as we are aware, the ships that would come, that is the Seabourn Odyssey and the Celebrity Millennium, they will come with fully vaccinated crew and passengers. What does that mean? It means that we are expecting the crew on board to be 98% vaccinated and the passengers to be 95% vaccinated. We do understand and appreciate that the new ruling out of Florida puts us in a different space, in that the ruling out of Florida says that the cruise lines cannot ask the passengers their vaccination status. We are looking at that matter very carefully because it is going to impact our industry depending on how it goes. I, however, should say that we have taken a collective and concerted effort within the OECS to address this matter. In fact, we sent off a letter jointly by the OECS territories about 3 weeks ago, indicating our disappointment with the issue in Florida. So we are hopeful that because of our collective approach, that this matter will inure to our benefit. But I just want to say to those in the industry, our stakeholders, the taxi drivers, the tour operators, the vendors, that we are in a new norm. And so don't expect that we are going to have 4 and 5 ships in the harbor. That is not the intent, at least for the initial stages. We are going to take it slowly, carefully, ensuring that we maintain as our top priority the safety and security of our citizens. Having said that, I would also like to indicate that when the passengers alight from the cruise vessel, they are going to go into bubble tours. What does that mean? It means that they will not have direct contact with the citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis. If they are going to tour, for example, Brimstone Hill, all the persons working at Brimstone Hill would be vaccinated on that particular day that the ship and its passengers will go there. So they'll leave from the ship to the designated transportation to Brimstone Hill in a bubble. That means all the persons that they will come into contact with will be vaccinated. They will visit Brimstone Hill or whichever tour they visit, and they come back to the ship in the same bubble without being allowed to have contact with our citizens. It therefore means that when they come off the ship on the 22nd, for example, you're not going to see them in the town of Bastia. We're not going to allow that in the initial stages. Obviously, we're in a pandemic, and we want to keep ourselves as safe as possible, and so we are taking all necessary precautions that need to be taken. Of course, we understand that this is a time that persons are hurting. We understand that the taxi drivers and tour operators haven't worked sufficiently over the last 15 months. And this is why we have taken the decision to entertain the ships, but entertain them in a way that we can manage. And so we are hopeful that persons will adhere to the protocols, the non-pharmaceutical protocols, and that we will have a safe start or restart to the cruise industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Grant. I now invite the Commissioner, Mr. Hilroy Brandy, to address the allegations of gunshots at Needs Must.
Good morning to everyone. I must report on Tuesday evening, police received report of 2 suspicious persons in the Needmust area and warrant investigation. We quickly dispatched one of our patrol team and they saw the 2 persons and pursue. Both persons ran into some bushy areas. The patrol pursue on foot. One of the officers discharged a firearm. One of the persons was captured, and we are still investigating this incident. No one was injured.
Thank you, Commissioner. I now ask the press here if they have a follow-up question. This is the second round. Yes, yeah, okay. So the opening of the economy in October, that was one question asked. We'll take that. CMO?
All right, so good morning, everyone. The question referred to the reopening of the economy by October, and what if the herd immunity threshold was not achieved by then? Now, our vaccination program was rolled out in February the 22nd to be specific, and in 5 months we have achieved the following coverage rates: 69.4% of the target population covered with the first dose, and 57.2% of the target population fully vaccinated and covered with the second dose. And so in 5 months, we've achieved a whole lot. And so I think the more apt question would be, what can we do to achieve the herd immunity threshold ahead of October? In the ensuing 3 months, We want individuals to empower themselves with respect to the facts about the COVID-19 vaccine and come on board in terms of accepting same. Now, we are in the middle of responding to this present wave of infections, and we are learning a whole lot. At present, we have a number of fifth form students who are taking regional exams, CXC exams, and students at CFBC taking CAPE exams, and they've been impacted through the contact tracing process. And in some instances, through no fault of their own, they have been at home in self-quarantine because of parents, relatives in the household who are contacts of cases. And I say this to say that we want parents of children to come on board in terms of accepting the vaccine. Not only parents of those students who are taking regional exams, but we are speaking about the reopening of the early childhood sector. And we can do so safely if the parents of the children who will be attending the preschools and the daycare centers to be fully vaccinated, and also the teachers of the secondary schools, the primary schools, and teachers within the early childhood sector to come on board, because that reduces the vulnerability and reduces the number of students who will be impacted and teachers who would be impacted. And I'm also using this opportunity to reach out to the frontline workers along the corridor of containment, the immigration workers, customs, more of the taxi operators, and importantly, the frontline workers in the hotel industry. So these are some specific sectors who we would want to reach out to and implore in terms of coming on board in accepting the vaccine, and in so doing, we would be well on our way in terms of achieving the herd immunity threshold.
I just also want to add, though, that herd immunity is not a finish line, and we will continue to push forward to have a significant proportion of our population vaccinated, because the science has shown that the herd immunity threshold is about 70 to 85% of the population. And starting off here, 30% of our population is below the age of 18. And what we're basically saying then is that every adult who can be vaccinated should go forward and get vaccinated. And the greater the proportion of the population that gets vaccinated by October is the more risk we will be able to absorb. And when I speak about risk, we could have decided to hide in the basement and keep our country closed down and keep the virus out. But we have to move forward, and moving forward means opening our borders and opening the tourism sector. And if we are going to be existing in a world where COVID-19 continues to circulate, we are going to have the virus coming in once our borders are open. But the way we will stop it from spreading is by having a significant proportion of the population vaccinated. And so I don't want to focus on using the term herd immunity, but for us every day to push forward to get this proportion higher and higher. The CMO mentioned the figures we have. The clinics are open. I want to encourage every adult out there to go forward and get vaccinated.
Thank you, Dr. Wilkinson. I now have some questions that were sent, and I would deal with those questions now. The first one is from Freedom FM. We have not heard anything referenced in relation to the easing of the lockdown moving forward after the expiration of the current SR&O. What will be the measures in place after Sunday, July 12th? Will businesses be able to reopen with some restrictions, and will there be a continued curfew to enable us to continue to curtail the spread of the virus? The second question from Freedom: the quarantine time of 9 days is a bit hard to do. Is there any chance of those numbers being reduced?
I want to thank Freedom Radio for that question. Today was simply to announce what we promised last Friday we will do, the measures that would bring relief to our people and measures that would stimulate the economy. So we are fulfilling that particular commitment. Clearly, by the time the SRO expires, in another few days, on the 12th or thereabout, the government will be ready. And before that date, we shall announce a new measures that will become necessary to deal with the situation which we find ourselves in. We are hopeful at this particular moment in time that if the trend of discipline continues, that we will be in a better place. We do not want to keep the country in a prolonged lockdown, so there will be adjustment to the measures. I shall refrain from going into the details at this particular moment in time, save to say that before the day on which they expire, the nation would be more fully advised with respect to them. All the relevant parties, the health team, the Office of the Attorney General, the Cabinet itself. Indeed, after this press conference, the Cabinet will meet to have a further look of what will happen after the 12th. But already, I want to thank Dr. Wilkinson and Dr. Laws. There's been a broad strategic outline presented to the Cabinet yesterday, which will guide some of the policy positions which the Cabinet will collectively take later today when we meet. So long before the 12th, I can promise you will have a fuller details with respect to those. And clearly the country knows where it wants to go, because in the question come certain suggestions that you would need a curfew to maintain certain elements of stability within the society, and so on and so on. And we went through this drill, if you wish, last year. And so the past is a good indicator of what the future will be at times. And so last year we began a phase opening up of the country to minimize the challenges that could occur if all at once you open the floodgate in a manner of speaking. And so you will see the same deliberate, thoughtful approach of the government being explained to you in another couple of days. What is different this year than last year as we deal with the pandemic is that we have the most powerful weapon in the fight. And the most powerful weapon in the fight is for more of our people to become vaccinated so that there is more protection for each of us in the society. And I would want to encourage Freedom Radio to do an effective promotion of vaccination so that, of course, more people can understand the importance. It's not just about you, it's about all of us. We are doing it for all of us. We are doing it for our child because we saw what happened when Sandy Point Primary had to close, when a number of other schools have to close. We understood that. We saw what happened when businesses had to close. It might have only been one person of direct interest, but because it is an invisible virus, the entire business had to close. In our moving forward, we accept that COVID-19 will be with the world for another long period of time, and that until everyone is safe, no one is safe. And that is why you cannot let your guard down. And that is why these circumstances have to be managed. And every tool available to the government, including the use of curfews, will remain on board because of the mercurial nature the changing nature of the COVID-19 pandemic, the government must always have all its tools available. Whether it is a propitious moment to utilize any of them is a matter for consideration. So in moving forward, we'll keep all our tools. In the meanwhile, every one of us can become vaccinated and put us at the highest level of protection in which all businesses can operate and function properly, given the new norms. So again, thanks for that particular question in relation to what happens after the 12th. After the 12th, we hope to see some significant easement, unless between now and the 12th, we have some surprise. But so far, I want to thank the people, and I want to thank those who are being encouraged by responsible journalists to go out today, tomorrow, and every day that it is available to become vaccinated. Because the science has shown those who are not vaccinated are most vulnerable to the pandemic. But it affects all of us. That is the challenge. The individual decision of one person can affect all of us. So we all have to encourage each other to do the right thing for ourselves, for themselves, and for our beloved country.
Coming back once again from SK Newsline. Within the context of the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on the fiscal resources of the government, how does the situation now impact some of the major infrastructural projects, such as the Baxter High School, the completion of the Island Main Road, and several others? How is that going to be played out over the next 2 or 3 years?
I would invite the Prime Minister again. After. Financial Secretary.
There would be no anticipated impact on the government's capital program as a result of the pandemic on the fiscal affairs of the government. We have articulated a budget that is publicly available in our estimates, and we have provided the resources that would be required to execute that budget.
I would only add, the Financial Secretary is right in terms of the financial resources, that the main issue would be one of timing, because as you know, when we are in lockdown, certain activities are postponed. As a result, unless the Commissioner of Police, in his own deliberate judgment, undertake to give some leeway for certain projects to take place.
The following questions are from Sugar City 90.3 FM. Subsidies and incentives were mentioned for all industries except entertainment. The entertainment industry has been adversely affected, and the first affected after the outbreak or introduction of the COVID-19 virus into the community. What is the detailed plan to support this industry that has been affected? And question 2, which has an A part and a B part, in relation to the Caribbean Premier League, the CPL, what is the status regarding patrons attending the games? Would vaccinated and unvaccinated be able to attend? What would be the capacity limit for the stadium? Prime Minister, will you take the first one?
Thanks. Although the Minister of Entertainment is here, and so I would let her add. But I would say, at a general rule, the way we have put forward the stimulus package is that anyone who can show that they have been out of work, that they are a registered employee and they've been out of work, whether self-employed or otherwise, they should be able to benefit from the $1,000 initiative. So that is very broad in terms of its reach, and we would hope and encourage that all entertainers in the country have registered themselves as self-employed persons for their own protection for circumstances like this, so that they will have an opportunity of the benefits coming either directly from the Social Security or indirectly from the government, or directly from the government being made available to them. But there is that first call of the poll. Further, going forward, as we relax the restrictions, greater opportunities will be there for all entertainers and all businesses to be able to participate more. We would want to encourage them because, again, if we look elsewhere as to some guidance as to where the future may go, we understand now that they are looking at special events in entertainment for persons who are vaccinated. Therefore, those who are entertainers in their own self-interest should be encouraging their fans, their supporters to also become vaccinated, because ultimately it is the most effective tool for protection. And in our open up strategy, we have to ensure that we still continue to protect people. Ultimately, the most fundamental job of a government is to keep its people safe from harm. And it may not only be the physical harm over which Mr. Brandy and Colonel Comrie should provide strategic operational leadership, but harm from a virus. And so again, we know what the tool is. The most powerful thing we have is to get vaccinated. So the more of your fans, the more of you vaccinated, then we wouldn't be having this conversation, because we will be as normal as can be in those particular circumstances. Before the minister comes, I'll just add one last note, that the government listens and the government is with the people. And so if there are reasonable proposals that can be put to the government, we always welcome them, and we will determine what we can do at a particular point in time. Minister.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. And I just wanted to add that, yes, indeed, the stimulus package covers all industries. It did not exclude any, or it did not point to particular ones. And one thing that I'm encouraged with is that many of our entertainers and persons who work within that entertainment industry are all registered as entrepreneurs or small business owners. And so obviously they will be covered. And so I want to continue to encourage everyone within that space to continue to be registered as a self-employed or as your own entrepreneur, so that you can continue to benefit from everything that the government continues to offer in terms of stimulus. Now, coming out of the lockdown, as the Prime Minister indicated, that there are a number of initiatives that we will be speaking to. But if we look at entertainment in particular, then one of the things that we have already put in place, as the Prime Minister said, many countries are moving towards vaccinated persons being allowed to be at different events, whether it is in entertainment or sports. And so as part of our vaccination database, we would have included a portal that would allow persons to receive their vaccination record electronically. And so the event organizers, whether it is entertainment or sports, would be given access to a portal. And so once persons come to these events, then it would give you the opportunity to scan the individual's electronic record and then verify whether or not the individuals are vaccinated. And so that's another element that we added, considering that many of our event planners, our organizers would need that type of assistance in order to be able to help them to manage whenever we decide that persons can only attend events or whether it is entertainment or sporting events who are vaccinated. We've created that portal to allow you the ability to be able to access a person's electronic record information and verify that persons are vaccinated. On top of that, we also took into consideration that there are persons that will be coming in from overseas. Now, our KNA travel forms allows persons to input or update or upload, your vaccination status as well. That information would then be linked to our vaccination database. So persons coming into country as well, whether you're coming for CPL or whatever the case is, your vaccination record will be in our database, and that allows you as well to be able to verify whether or not you're fully vaccinated so that you'll be able to attend events. So I just wanted to add that bit. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister of Entertainment. These following questions, I will ask them in succession. They are from Win FM 98.9. CPL, Minister of Sports.
Good morning, all. As it relates to the CPL, which is scheduled to begin next month on the 26th, the capacity for attendance at those games is based on the rule that had been announced before, which is 50% capacity for any sporting event. So that applies still. In terms of the status of persons entering, only fully vaccinated adults will be allowed to enter the games, and that would cover children within their care. So a child who wants to attend CPL can only do so with an adult who is fully vaccinated. As of today, notices would have been shared in social media and in other forums, inviting persons who are interested in being volunteers for the CPL would have gone out. So persons can now register to be volunteers. Again, all of those persons must be fully vaccinated in order to participate even as a volunteer. We are in the process of, through the local organizing committee, engaging with a number of different service providers, whether it be transportation, catering, security, cleaning, a number of different industries. All persons must be fully vaccinated. So if you would like to get a job catering, for example, you and your team must show that you are all fully vaccinated in order to participate. I can also, at this point in time, indicate that the CPL cohort itself is in excess of 90% fully vaccinated. Those who are not yet fully vaccinated are not vaccinated because either of unavailability of the vaccine to those individuals or for religious purposes. But it is anticipated that by the time the games start in August, that all the persons that can be vaccinated will be vaccinated. So I use the opportunity to encourage persons who want to participate, whether through some sort of service or even to attend the games, to go out and get vaccinated. The Prime Minister would have announced that as of today, vaccinations are available again. We still have time for persons to go and get both doses between now and the 26th of August. So I jump on the bandwagon and encourage all persons to go out and do so, not just for CPL, but for your own protection and those that are in your care that can't protect themselves.
Thank you, Minister Powell. These questions are now from Win FM 98.9. There are three of them. Will St. Kitts and Nevis receive more doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine? Will the government reduce quarantine time for fully vaccinated travelers and introduce incentives for fully vaccinated people? And the third one, can the Chief Medical Officer state how many active cases are currently on the island of Nevis? Dr. Wilkinson, Dr. Laws.
Well, I believe the greatest incentive one can have to go and get vaccinated is to prevent yourself from getting severely ill and to decrease your risk of dying from the virus. And so I believe the government doesn't necessarily have to add more to that. But you heard, for example, about CPL and being able to access something like that if you're vaccinated. You see where the world is going now in terms of you having to be vaccinated to enter a number of regional and international places. And so there are other incentives for persons to go forward and get vaccinated. What we keep saying, however, that as a country, we have to have a significant population immunity so that everyone benefits, because when we sit at this podium here, we have to look out for every single person in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. That doesn't necessarily mean that people who can be vaccinated can sit back and refuse to be vaccinated and hold progress back. But we'll continue to make sure that everyone who can will go and get vaccinated. As it relates to if we are going to get other doses of AstraZeneca, we keep saying that we'll continue to source other vaccines, AstraZeneca, and if others come on board, we'll also seek to get those. I think I answered. Yes. Nevis, CMO, will deal with Nevis.
At present, we are monitoring 183 active cases on the island of Nevis. I think we have at least two active cases being monitored as we speak. Case 18 would have left the island, and so I think there are two active cases being monitored. I do not have the database before me right now, but we either have 2 or 3 active cases remaining in Nevis. Thanks.
Again from ZIZ News. I know the topic of the Basse-Terre High School just came up, but some persons are looking for a more pointed response as to the progress of the project. So an update on, where it is right now. Thank you.
Deputy Prime Minister.
Good afternoon to everyone. With respect to the Basse-Terre High School project, that project is still very much on stream. We would have indicated to the public before that there are a number of issues that we had to deal with. One of the current ones that we have before us is that of insurance to cover the construction itself. As it is currently, different bids are being sought in respect of the insurance. The last 14 to 28 days would have a sort of limited our capacity in terms of getting those bids on hand so that a decision can be made with regards to which particular insurance company would be providing the coverage. We're hoping that very shortly that will be put in place. And so in terms of the actual construction or the start of the construction of Basse-Terre High School, that would begin. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. Now, quite a number of the questions that are coming have to do with the new regulations. The Prime Minister would have announced that the Cabinet has not made any final determination on the new regulations. So that is an answer to those questions that are coming. These questions are from Freedom FM. The Prime Minister announced a number of duty concessions for bus operators. Are there any similar initiatives in place for the importation of school supplies? That's the first one. And the second one, for some time now, we have noticed the absence of Press Secretary Grant from government programs and the Prime Minister's press conferences. Has the Press Secretary resigned?
I want to thank Freedom Radio for those questions, taking the first and the last. The answer to the first question in relation to support for education supply, that is already existing, so there is no need for any further coverage. Indeed, one of the first acts of the Team Unity government was to have removed VAT from education supplies. I remember interestingly in the debate when the former Prime Minister had denied that VAT was being paid on education supply. The member for St. Christopher 5, now Deputy Prime Minister, had gone perhaps to Tennessee, bought some education supplies and came back with the evidence. So we have corrected that, and education supplies then are VAT-free and would have all the other concessions in place, from my recollection. Financial Secretary, is that? Come. I'll let the Financial Secretary add some more of the support in terms of
Prime
education.
Minister, I was also saying that there is a very entrenched program of support for purchasing of educational supplies.
And just to enumerate some of them, which I did mention in my opening statement, the free books that we provide for the students, the payment of examination, we have the school meals programs going, we have uniforms being provided. I mean, we have been comprehensive in terms of our support for education, and we will continue to give that support to all and sundry. So that in terms of education, in terms of Mrs. Grant, I will say something about that perhaps closer to the end, just to say that Ms. Grant has provided always sterling support to the office of the Prime Minister, has always gone beyond the call of duty. It's been public knowledge that Ms. Grant had been away for an extended period of time due to illness, etc. And in terms of her own future role, maybe at this particular moment, I could say that Ms. Grant has formally resigned as the press secretary, and she will go on to do other things I'm not at liberty to disclose, but to record with deepest and the highest appreciation my sincere gratitude for her long and sterling performance as the press secretary. Perhaps we can say that she was the first professional press secretary to have come to the government as a press secretary in the office of the Prime Minister. So she has defined that role effectively, and she understands the exigencies of the office of the Prime Minister, so he had been a special delight. She was among perhaps one of the few public servants I could call upon 24/7. Because are the demands. The doctors are on 24/7. Mr. Brandy is on 24/7. It goes without saying in this. But in the way in which my life and the exigencies of the government have come, I have had need for ongoing support from technical team. Ms. Grant has been one of those who had always been there, and not just there for the office of the Prime Minister, every ministry who needed some support, she was always willing. So we wish her all the very best at this time as she will attempt to pursue new endeavors. There will always be a welcoming arm for her to come back in any area of the government in which she may have interest. Her support, as I said, has been sterling, reliable, dependable, and outstanding at every event. She enjoyed research, she enjoyed doing many things that has uplifted the office of the Prime Minister. I had intended to make that statement at the end. Freedom Radio have preempted that announcement, so at the end I wouldn't have to belabor on that except to extend my own personal best wishes to Mrs. Grant, to her family, from the office of the Prime Minister, myself as the Prime Minister, and all the functionaries, and certainly the extended cabinet with which she worked, and very critical issues. She was one of the senior public servants who will enter into the cabinet and be available to hear some of the very confidential discussions that we were engaging, so that she could help formulate the government's communication strategy. So again, commendations to her. She leaves with no hard feelings, and she always would have, as I said, a welcoming arm. I want to again record my most sincere congratulations to her for a fine job. Indeed, one of the exercises that I've asked her to do when we last met was to help to more properly define the role of a press secretary, because before her, none had come to it with her level of training and preparation in terms of communication. And so she has worked it in times of stress and difficulty and in normal times, and she therefore has the best thoughts and what really that office demand is highly demanding. She served it well, and she served her country extremely well. So thanks, Freedom, for bringing that question perhaps too soon, because I wanted to say it among other things as I wrapped up, but lest there be any hint that there were anything awry, I want to make it clear that she leave with the full support and all the grace. And in fact, she has several weeks indicated to myself and the Cabinet Secretary some of the things she was contemplating and why she needed, as it were, to take a break at this particular moment in time.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for your response. These last questions, because we have to bring this press conference to a close. These last questions are from Vaughan Radio in Nevis. Can we have some feedback as to how it has been going for students sitting exams during the lockdown period? I suspect that question will go to the Minister of Education. The second question, in light of TDC's Board of Directors stating that unvaccinated staff will not be called out to work on Monday, what is the government's standpoint on this? Could you also explain briefly to the public if there is a rule or law that allows an establishment to make such a decision? I suspect that the Attorney General can address that question. And there is another question here, but I do not think anyone here is here to answer that. It has to do with if there has been any uptick in cases of violence during the lockdown. I know that the Prime Minister did mention that certain things were being put in place by the government to help vulnerable groups like battered women and things like that.
As it relates to the ongoing CXC examinations that have been taking place over the course of the past 2 weeks, I can safely say that things have been going smoothly in terms of that process. There were some initial teething issues that did arise, mainly due to persons not traveling with the permission slips that had been issued. Each student would have been issued some form of permission to be on the road during lockdown, as well as something that parents who are taking them to and from examinations could produce to the security officials if and when stopped. But that was rectified quite early, and so far we've had no incidences that need to be reported. I myself would have visited some of the examination sites up to yesterday. This week we have English, math, and history, I believe, and so we anticipated an increase in terms of the number of persons on the road to write exams. And so I use the opportunity to say thank you to students and parents for their continued support in terms of their compliance with the protocols. Thank you to Solomon Claxton, our CXC registrar, who's been overseeing this entire process and has been quite busy working to ensure things go smoothly, and to the various invigilators and other staff who've come out to support the students in writing the exams. And we hope to have some good news to report at the end of this in terms of increased passes and grades over last year. Thank you.
Attorney General.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much, Les Roy. The situation as regards the mandating of vaccinated individuals to work. At this point in time, there is no policy that has been decided by the cabinet. We have been part, as I'm sure the Prime Minister will say, of ongoing discussion within the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, where the heads have mandated that their various legal departments and legal experts come up with a common policy for all our individual countries. It is a matter that is across the region, is something of great debate. And we would want to encourage everyone in St. Kitts and Nevis to get vaccinated. As we have been hearing today and over the last few months, our number one tool to fight against the pandemic is for all our citizens to be vaccinated. We expect people to be vaccinated. There are certain types of engagements which we believe require that those who interact with our customers, members of staff, and others be vaccinated. We determined that these are what we would say frontline, that are who are more susceptible, more exposed and vulnerable, and that there should be some measure of control in those areas. It has been, for us up to this point, where this is a decision to take by various establishments. They are subject, in some cases, to various types of laws by constitutional arrangements. But in the case of where it is reasonably justifiable in our society, and the fact that we have this wide-ranging pandemic, this virus, it is reasonable for some establishments to require that their frontline employees have some form of coverage of the vaccination process. We await, as it was, guidance from a regional point of view, and until the cabinet itself makes a firm decision, we here in St. Kitts and Nevis are guided by your own dictates, as I would say at this point in time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Attorney General. These are our last, I think there are three questions. Yeah, the question has been asked about the parking space at the market. There needs to be parking space at the market. Another question, when will the traffic department find a new home to work from? And the third one, when will the police training school at the camps be completed? And that's it for questions.
You'll have to give me a reminder. With respect to the activity at the camp, I'll invite Lieutenant Colonel Conway to respond to that, since he will be better placed. I'm not sure. Oh, okay. In terms, though, of the training school, well, Mr. Brandy is here and the PS is here. They can all report. What I would say, that efforts are being made to have a brand new traffic unit being established, and that should take place in the Panpasha area where the police has their training school. The property has already been identified. As far as I'm aware, substantial work has already commenced with the Public Works Department in terms of the design arrangement. So that is a work in progress. For quite some time, it had been accepted that the present location of the traffic department was not most appropriate. Mr. Brandy, over the last months or so, had visited a number of locations as an alternative, having accepted that the situation there could not endure for long. The alternatives were rental of private properties. Some of them could not provide the kind of support services, including space for parking, etc., which such a unit would require. And therefore, we had from some other private parties some extortionate options in terms of the rental. Mr. Brandy, in his own deliberate judgment, determined, rightly so, that the cost was prohibitive, and he and his high command came up with the option of facilitating that at an existing property available to the police. So we are working on that particular project. So that answers the traffic department issue. That was it? The issue of the market, we have Ron Collins here. I am not clear because the question wasn't posed with any contours. What about the parking space? So Ron, could you add anything in terms of parking? Or Mr. Brandy, who heads the traffic department in that regard?
Good afternoon. We do acknowledge that there are some challenges with parking in the vicinity where the public market is currently located, and the police has been providing tremendous support in terms of how they have arranged and guided the traffic in that area. There's not much that can be done to the area right now, save for what the police has been doing, directing traffic in other roads to allow for the smooth of traffic the flow of traffic that goes to the west, go in the westerly direction, and that which goes to in the easterly direction is directed through some roads in the Irish Town area. There is allowance, and the officers there work with the police to provide for the vendors to offload their produce in an organized manner in the market, and then they're able to move out of that area. However, we are looking at the other sites, which we will come shortly before the public can advise, that will help to ease not only the congestion in terms of the vendors in the public market, but also the parking. So the area and the situation will improve shortly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to the end of our question and answer segment. I want to thank the media for posing their questions and all of the cabinet members and all of the responders to the questions. Thank you very much. I want to ask the Prime Minister to give his parting remarks.
Thank you. I just want to perhaps make or say three things. One, of course, is to again extend publicly my condolences to the government and people of the Republic of Haiti on the brutal killing of President Moïse, and of course the suffering inflicted with respect to his wife. We certainly do hope that in due course calm will be returned and restored to Haiti, that the people will be kept safe, and of course we join in the statement issued by the CARICOM community in which we stand available to render assistance to Haiti. Haiti has been particularly special in the context of our rooted Caribbean history, being one of the first countries to have thrown off colonial oppression and achieve independence. It has been a long regret for those of us who appreciate the importance of that in history, that the Haitian society has not, as it were, risen to the highest level of endeavor that we would want and expect from such a resilient people who have made history on behalf of us. Their uprising way back in the early 18th century or latter part, in fact, was the forebearer to the efforts of those of us in the English-speaking West Indies to launch a more aggressive demand for emancipation and the amelioration of black people, with stalwarts like Toussaint and Dessalines and Henry Christophe. Haiti has the potential for tremendous greatness. It's never too late for greatness to be owned and to, as it were, be promoted by the people. We have an important group of Haitians living in St. Kitts and Nevis, and we want them to understand that we appreciate their own uncertainty over developments in their own country. We stand with you. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has been advised to keep abreast of the evolving situation in Haiti and to make as much information available to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, including all our residents here from Haiti. Additionally, we have an honorary consul in Haiti. Permanent Secretary Kebas has been in touch with him, and if there are any particular issues of concern which you would like to have the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to Permanent Secretary Kebas investigate on your behalf, we will be willing to provide that particular service. We wish all the people of Haiti well at this very difficult period of time. I want, for the record, to indicate my profoundest appreciation for all the members of the St. Kitts and Nevis National Task Force on COVID-19. This task force has become the main instrument through which the government response to the COVID-19 pandemic is being coordinated, brought to cabinet, and action is being taken. The civil servants on it go beyond the call of duty, and so I want to commend them. I spoke earlier about the excellence of support and service rendered by the outgoing Press Secretary Valencia Grant, but equally they have been rendering yeoman service. So I want to commend Abdia Samuel and the full team of dedicated civil servants who have been supplied in support to our country at this particular moment in time, not just with COVID, but we are in the hurricane season, and so they have to do special mobilization, even as we work and implement the care packages that Social Security has been so gracious to make available to the country at this time. The National Task Force has been coordinating the effective delivery, where to date over 3,000 plus persons have been provided with care packages, and that number will grow daily. Mr. Abdia Samuel has done us proud, and I want to thank him, and through him, all the other persons and subcommittee leaders who have been part of it. And equally to commend the efforts of the Attorney General and Senator Wendy Phipps as chairs of the Mitigation Council for their very useful support on these activities. Even as we go about our daily routine, there's a lot of work that is being done behind the scene by a dedicated cadre of civil servants. And as the minister responsible for the civil service, I want to applaud them, to thank them, and to encourage them to continue to do well. And to thank the Attorney General, because he has been a bulwark of support in all of these endeavors, both for his indefatigable commitment to getting us through this pandemic. And I remember then when we were in opposition and I was leading the team, one of the things he kept saying to me, there are three qualities. He wasn't Prime Minister then. Timothy, he would call me then. He still called me so at good times. He would say, these three qualities I want you to focus on. One of them was the sense of social justice. One of them was perseverance. And the third one, he will remind me after this press conference. But there were three qualities he pointed me to, and I want to thank him. I'm seeing these qualities being exercised in him as he lead the Mitigation Council, spending countless hours beyond the already extensive nature of the work of the Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs. So, AG, I commend you really for all that you have been doing and the sacrifices you have made for the country, much of it unknown. But when the history is written, I'm sure that you will get a chapter, one written by me and one written by Jean, among others. The final thing I must do as the Prime Minister is to commend two of our outstanding athletes, Amir Clark and Jason Rogers, who are on their way to the Olympic Games in Tokyo later this month, and they are going to be part of the 100-meter dash. Jason Rogers, we know, is a well-known athlete hailing from Sandy Point, and Amir Clark is from the petite village of Christchurch in my constituency. She has spent a lot of time in the USA, and over the last 3 or 4 years has been one of the rising stars. So they go with all of our love and our support. I want also to recognize that our chairman at ZIZ, Mr. Lester Hanley, will be providing support to this team, and I want to wish him bon voyage in his travel. Incidentally, Lester Hanley is also the chairman of ZIZ. So he again will leave with our love and our high expectation that they will have good report for us. Again, on a note of thank you, today has been another excellent press conference to commend all those who have put questions to help to clarify, inform, and update our citizens, and of course to thank the Cabinet for its outstanding support, and Dr. Bernicia Nisbet was come to lend her support and solidarity to the work of the government. All the senior officials, Ambassador Powell, the rest of the government, I want to say thank you, and we hope as a result of your participation and involvement, the country is better informed today than it was yesterday about several matters of national interest. So may God bless us all, and may He continue to protect our beloved country. Thank you very much. And Lesro, I thank you for adding your own style to the press conference and for doing a very good job at short notice. God bless you too.